Alright, today's lesson is our first look into the node graph or AI navigation for Source Engine and how it deals with navigating and making movement decisions for the AI. So the first thing I want you to do is take the map that we worked on yesterday, the sample that had your 15 citizens, and I want you to just build kind of a rudimentary not a maze, but just stick some walls in it. And you can kind of see how I did mine here. I've just got some random walls throughout it. I do want one particular architectural setup. I want a doorway, but don't put a door on it. Just leave a doorway, and we'll deal with actual doors later. But for today's lesson, I want you to have a doorway built into it. So, you'll end up with something kind of like this. So I've just got some random walls around my map here. Here's some of my citizens. And then I kind of bisected the whole map here. And I left a little doorway. And then if you go to the other side, I put a couple more walls. So before you do anything else, pause the video. Go throw in a few walls. They're just brushes, nothing in particular. The thickness doesn't really matter. Just wall thickness, whatever that is to you. Height, obviously they can't be short enough that the NPCs can jump over them. So make them 6, 8, 10 feet tall, something. I don't know how tall these are, probably 8 feet. But I want them to be obstacles for the NPCs. All right, so pause the video, do that, and then come back to the video. All right, so if you're back at this point, I assume you have some walls on your video. So what we have to do now is we have to start laying in what's called an info node. And an info node is an entity that creates a web of navigation information for the AI to follow. And when we do the Combine lesson in the next week, the Combine will try to patrol and pursue the player, but if we don't give them a node graph with navigation information, they're frozen. And the only navigation they can do is to run directly at the player. So by building these navigation meshes, we're able to allow the AI to wander and search and perform tactical maneuvers like trying to flank the player or go through a doorway, those kind of things. So if you don't do this, your AI, it will work, but the AI will typically be relegated to simply running directly at the player. So this is a really important step and something you're going to want to do to your main map once we're done with this lesson. You're going to want to go back to your main map and start adding in these nodes. All right, so they're really simple to add. We're going to start with our entity tool, and then we're going to come over here and we're going to type in info underscore node. And you're going to see there's several. We're only going to deal with 2 of them today, and then we'll come back to the rest of them like everything else. We're going to do the basic ones first, and then we'll start adding like air nodes and things like that. So the most basic one is the info node. This is just, they call it a ground node, and it basically identifies walking areas on the map. So I'm going to select info node. And the placement of your info nodes is not entirely random. What we're doing is we're trying to create waypoints around obstacles that the AI can navigate to. So let me drop a few and kind of show you what I'm talking about. So I've got these walls here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put one right there. And then I'll put one in this corner. And I'll put one in this corner, and I'll put one at the end of the wall here, this corner, maybe out here, over here, and over here. So the first thing I do is I'm going to kind of go around and put these ground nodes around my obstacles, basically on corners. And what happens is when the AI tries to move, say this guy wants to walk, he's going to look for these different nodes because he's going to understand that these nodes are places that he can go to. Now, when he triangulates his path, he's not just going to pick one and walk straight to it. But if he wants to go around to the other side here, he knows that this is a viable navigable spot. So he will calculate a path to it, and it may not be straight. He might walk in a curve, and then he may not even go directly to this. He might just go close to it. So what the ground nodes do is they kind of tell the AI, like, hey, you can walk in this area. And they don't necessarily have to walk to that spot, but it identifies walkable areas for them. And an example they give in the documentation is, say we were making a beach landing, like a Normandy beach landing, and we wanted the AI to get up to the bunkers at the top. So what we would do is we would put just a few info nodes on the beach, and we would put a whole bunch of them up into the bunkers. And what that does is it kind of tells the AI that there's not a lot of places on the beach. I need to get up to where the rest of the nodes are. So the AI will always kind of gravitate towards where you have nodes. Now, we want to make sure we place enough nodes on the map so that they're not just stuck navigating around this little wall section here. So what I'll do is then I'll kind of pick a spot in the middle. I'll put one there, and I'll look over here, and I'll put one out here, and I'll go to the corner of my map, and I'll put one in the corners. So we're kind of identifying areas that we would like the AI to be able to walk to. Now, if we don't put node graphs, they can still go there if they're following the player, or they might go there if they're being chased, but they won't navigate there by their own free will. It would be a forced decision. So we're going to lay out these little nodes kind of scattered around the map, and we're going to concentrate them in areas where we want most of the NPC activity to be. So you'll notice I put like one in the corners, because I don't want the NPCs to go hang out in the corners. But if I put a bunch of them around this wall in the middle, then this is going to be identified to the NPCs as somewhere where I kind of want them to hang out and walk around. Now the doorway is a little bit different. So the doorway has kind of a specific layout that Valve recommends. So I'm going to change my ground texture real quick because it keeps glitching on me. So doorways have the ability to create like a pinch point where people will get stuck in a doorway. And so the NPCs will run into each other, and they'll get stuck bumping into each other as they run through. Nope, that's a decal. And so what we want to do is we want to avoid creating a pinch point for the NPCs. So what we're going to do with a door is, now my wall's doing it. With a door, we're going to put one here. Let me go back here. We're going to put one here. And we're going to put one kind of in front of the door, one off to the side of the door. And then we're going to go to the other side of the doorway, and we're going to put one on either side of the door, one in the center. So if I go above it, you can see I kind of created a little pattern there, and it's not exactly the same, and that's not going to hurt it at all. But what this does is it identifies the different approaches they can take for the door. So we have a straight on, and then we've got a left and a right on each side. Now in the center of the door, we need to let them know that they can also pass through this opening right here. So we're going to use a different node inside the doorway. That's going to be an info node hint. Okay, info node hint. And that is going to go directly in the center of the doorway. So you end up with a kind of this pattern that looks like this. You've got your sideways approaches, you've got your center approach. In the middle of the doorway, you have an info node hint, and then on the other side, they've got the two sides and the center. So what this teaches the AI is that they can approach the door from different angles, they're going to pass through the door, and then once they pass through the door, they can go left, right, or center. So they don't have to just go straight out. So we're kind of giving them um, a, a little bit of assistance for passing through the doorway. Now on your info node hint, the one that you dropped right here in the center, what we're going to do here is under the hint, we're going to drop down the menu and we're going to put in entrance exit pinch. Click apply and close it. That's all we have to do to that one. So this one right here in the middle is what we would consider a pinch point, right? Because if, say, 3 people are trying to go through it, that you've seen AI in games where they start bumping into each other or they get stuck. So the info node hint, the addition of the hint allows us to give the AI like a clue about this node is a little bit different than just a regular navigation node. So if we look at this node right here, this is a pinch point. It's an entrance or an exit, and what it means as a pinch point is that if 2 or 3 people are trying to come through here, they'll get stuck. But by putting an info node hint right here and then setting its hint as an entrance exit pinch, we're telling any AI that come around this door that this is a pinch point and that they should go through it single file rather than trying to go through it all together at once. So for today, I want you to set up your citizen map like this, and then once you're done with that, go back to your own map, the DLC map that we're making, and start dropping in your info nodes and then any pinch points, doorways, narrow hallways, that kind of stuff. Like a funnel type situation where you go from a room to a narrow funnel. Anywhere where pinching and 2 people would collide with each other if they tried to go at the same time, you're going to put that at the entrance of the, like say this was a hallway right here, right? So say this was a wall and there was a hallway that went straight along here. I would do this exact same setup with this. I just wouldn't have this on the other side if this was a hallway. If this was just a straight hallway that went down, I would still have the entrance to the hallway look like this because I can still enter the hallway from these positions, and this is still a pinch point right here. So on your map, we're going to start going through and adding info node hints and these pinch points. All right, let's save this map. And we're going to go ahead and run it. Now, with just the civilians in here, the citizens, you're not really going to see much of a difference on the map. They're pretty dumb and they just kind of follow the player around. When we get to the Combine map, the Combine really take advantage of these because they have built-in AI that does things like flanking maneuvers, and they try to surround the player, and they will duck and cover and assault the player basically. So they need these more than the civilians do. But let's take a look here at our map. All right, so now you're going to notice it says node graph. It's rebuilding the node graph because I put in a bunch of info nodes throughout my map. So now I've got these civilians here. They all look good. My doorway looks good. All right, and this is my node graph. All right, so we are going to open up our node graph and check it out and make sure we've got a bunch of good connections here. Make sure all the parts of the map are connected, and you can see my doorway has a nice line right through the middle of it. Nice and important because that means they can actually go through. And I don't know if you guys noticed that or not, but when they came through the door, they single file through the door instead of running into each other. They single file through the door. Perfect. All right, so how did I see the node graph? So it's pretty simple. you're going to open up your console, and the command is AI underscore show underscore connect. And you should be able to see it on my screen there. So it's AI underscore show underscore connect. What that does is it shows the AI node graph connections. And so what we're looking for is areas of the map that have broken lines to them. Like if there's parts of my map where I don't have any connections to it. And what we would do is we would go back and add a few more nodes in that area. So for today, don't worry too much about covering your whole map. I just want to see that you put in the node graphs. And for your screenshot today, I want a screenshot that shows me this node graph right here, through the doorway. So I want to see this nice connection pattern right here of all my different info nodes. And then we know we've got this straight line through the middle. There's a pinch right there. So your screenshot, I just want something that shows me this right here. I want to be able to get that guy out of my way. I want to be able to see your node graph on the ground. So I want to screenshot something like this right here. Okay? So that's it for today. Once you're done, get that screenshot, work on your map for me, and make sure you turn in your screenshot before the end of the period.